All right, guys, how's it going? Luminostic here, and I just wanted to pop on and do a quick live stream tonight in case anybody has any questions about the master plant video that I made about all the admixture plants. There's some controversy out there in the plant medicine world about mixing master plants, and actually, Aho Sacha is not a master plant, technically. It is just a very, very good medicinal plant, and also sort of a spiritual reset, I guess, would be the best way to describe it. The Quechua here have a word called panema, and it basically is like bad energy. But it could also be thought of more along the lines of just a lack of energy, like a void. You know how I say that there's only light and nothingness in the universe, and really that's it. So negative energy is kind of a false construct of people that don't really know what they're talking about. There's no active negative principle in the universe. It's just neutral and positive. Don't want to go too far down that philosophical rabbit hole at the moment, but that's kind of, an in-depth way of understanding what panema is. They say it causes laziness and a lack of motivation. And so drinking the Aho Sacha is a great way to reset so that you are positive. And I have seen some pretty miraculous cures in terms of my epileptic friend that came here, when he landed in Quito, he had 2 seizures in the first 24 hours. And when he arrived here the first day, I started giving him Aho Sacha with psilocybin teas, not enough to be, a strong dose, but if you have seizures, by the way, creating a bridge, hemisync communication, enhancing communication between the two hemispheres of the brain, or between the conscious and the subconscious mind, I think, also it helps anyone. But in the case of epilepsy, they think that that's why the seizures happen. The brain's not communicating properly. And so psilocybin, LSD, DMT, probably ketamine, any of these compounds will increase that communication, but apparently particularly psilocybin. So long story short, I started giving him Aho Sacha with guayusa and psilocybin and ayahuasca 3 times a week. And he did not have a single seizure. To my knowledge, he still hasn't had another seizure. And when he landed here, he was still on his medication. So I was able to accomplish what modern medicine had failed to do. Not only that, he had stopped taking his seizure medication against my advice. Not that that was sincere advice, but in the interest of, I'm a pretty casual person, but I have to adhere to some degree of professionality and tell people not to stop taking essential medications. Even if I don't really mean it, I have to say that, right? So hint, wink, wink, know what I mean? But honestly, I didn't tell him to do that. He told me after he had been there for a few weeks that he had stopped taking his seizure medication. And the incredible part about that is that should precipitate seizures. So the withdrawal from the seizure medication is extreme seizures. So not only did he stop having seizures, that his pharmaceuticals did not stop, the withdrawal never happened. So he walked right out of epilepsy after being here for 1 single day. Not to mention that he had also overcome a drug addiction while he was here that I to my knowledge has not recurred. So we have actually seen some pretty tremendous, remarkable transformation occur at the JungleGnosis retreats. And we are booking still for October is not full, which really surprises me, but it's true. And November and possibly December if there's interest after that. So shoot me an email if you are interested in further details. It's definitely on the lower end of the price range as far as retreats go, and definitely on the higher end of effective treatment and safety and authenticity, in the sense that we do work with Quechua people around us that are so isolated. They speak Spanish with such a heavy accent that it's difficult to understand what they're talking about. And you guys will see in the interview that we're about to publish with Mama Rosalia that, in just the way the indigenous mind works, the interviews can be very difficult because there's like a double language barrier and a conceptual barrier, I think, it's difficult to get around. I've actually considered trying to learn Quechua just to facilitate better communication because I've really noticed that it can be very difficult for us to communicate well. It's actually even more pronounced with the Warani because they have no concept for things like time. Traditionally, they're starting to, which I think is unfortunate. I'll probably do a video soon about the influence of the outside world that I've seen here, especially since COVID. Of course, it's not good. And I don't know if people really want to hear that kind of stuff. We have enough bad news as it is. But just a little tidbit of that. Speaking with Mama Rosalia in her ancestral cave, where she says her grandparents first lived when they came to this amazing property. Laguna Yani is one of the most extraordinary places I've ever seen. And it's right from our retreat center. It's like a 5-minute walk up the road. The ancestral cave is where we did her interview, where her parents first lived when they came here. But we've seen some tensions that were surprising, and then we found out that the people involved were all family, and of course it was over small amounts of money. And so, I've been noticing that, considering that this is basically a tribal area, there's no cooperation between people, and even what seems to me to be an unreasonable level of not cooperating. But she did tell us that that started to happen since COVID, that even within families, people are starting to get a little bit stingy is the word that she used. So that's another, benefit of coming to JungleGnosis, because we're not in Iquitos, we're not in Peru, we're not in Vilcabamba, we're not in any place where there's a lot of traffic. The people here are very isolated. Very authentic. They haven't been corrupted by the influence of the outside world as much. I'm not going to say at all, but certainly not as much. So I think there's a much higher degree of authenticity. It's still, I have seen shamans that are adapting their practice to conform to what they know people expect based on what they've read on the internet, which is really sad because, again, the ayahuasca industry is corrupting, the traditional practices and beliefs. Even beyond that, just the interaction with the outside world, a lot of new agey ideas are being adopted by shamans who typically tend to be very open to that kind of thing. But what I was saying about the master plants, and the reason the video that I just put out is a little bit controversial, is that, a lot of this retreat centers I've noticed have posted on their websites that it's dangerous to mix plants, which is almost completely untrue. It is dangerous to mix Toei, or, you call it Floripondia or Floripondio, depending on whether you're Quechua or Quichua. You may know it as Devil's Trumpet or Angel's Trumpet. It's tree datura also, even though it's reclassified. It's not a datura because the flowers hang instead of standing up. That's really the only really pronounced difference, other than the fact it's not nearly as dangerous as datura, which is not to say it isn't dangerous. In fact, it's the plant that's used. If you're ever in South America, and particularly, anyone that might be a prostitute, they use this a lot, hands you something with small print and asks you to read it. Don't fall for it. They're going to blow on the paper, and the scopolamine is going to go into your face. And it increases suggestibility by a very high order of magnitude. So you'll basically do anything that you're told to do. And so people will, rape people and they'll rob people. It doesn't happen so much here. We don't have a lot of crime, but Colombia, you hear a lot of horror stories, especially in the cities around Medellin and places like that about this plant. But, aside from the Solanaceae plants, I did feature one in the video that I just put out, although it's less dangerous. It's not impossible to poison yourself with it if you use the roots. It's pretty easy. The The bark is a little bit more safe, and the leaves and flowers are almost totally safe. I mean, if you really went crazy and boiled an entire pot down to a cup and drank it, you might get in trouble, you know? So it's, I consider it safe. But the tropane alkaloids, you know, they're, witchy is a good way to put it. But aside from that, I think that the real reason, some people might hate me for saying this, but the real reason that plant centers discourage people from mixing, or they say that you shouldn't mix ayahuasca, is because you don't actually need to do these long dietas if you combine the plants with ayahuasca in most cases. In fact, in my direct experience and feedback from people that I've gotten that have gone to legitimate Shipibo centers, that they noticed nothing on a 6-week dieta. This one friend of mine, 6-week dieta with bobinsana. But when he mixed it with ayahuasca, it changed your life instantly. And that was my experience as well, and Enrica. So we have a lot of corroboration of this, that the real motivation for these centers to tell you that it's dangerous to mix plants is that they make a lot more money if you sign up for a 6-week dieta than they do if you just drink ayahuasca with bobinsana or hosacha, which I don't do that because I serve it in teas all the time anyways. So everyone has it in their system. If you want to take baths in it, you can. You know, so it's not that you're not consuming it. I just think that ayahuasca tastes really, really bad already, and then putting something that tastes like garlic in that mixture is just a little bit over the top. And if you're drinking it in the morning every day anyways, it doesn't matter. But yeah, that's the truth about this, I think. And there are actually a number of reasons why this happens. You can think of it in modern terms. You know, people say Western, but we're all Western. So, or in the outsider way, I guess, of people from non-indigenous cultures, where we tend to think about things in terms of alkaloids and chemicals and enzymes. And I'm not saying the dieta is without purpose. It's not. It's not as important prior to ayahuasca alone. A lot of the things that you'll read online will interfere with ayahuasca, do not, and do not affect the trip. You'll even hear people tell you that ayahuasca will get angry with you if you consume certain things. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that those are rumors. They're just, you know, some of it I think maybe even motivated by people with a vegan agenda, because I have certainly, you know, here in Ecuador where I live, nobody says anything about not eating meat. Prior to ayahuasca, no tribe anywhere. There's nothing about red meat or anything. I mean, they'll literally eat a monkey after ceremony, the shuar and kofan and stuff. So, you know, the authentic experience is definitely a lot different from the commercial take at this point. You know, it's been going on for 20 years, so it's polluted a lot. But at any rate, the dieta serves a purpose when you're going to consume something with subtle influence like bobinsana. Bobinsana is not a plant that has powerful alkaloids that are going to lodge in your receptors and cause, you know, a very direct experience, like, you know, psilocybin or something. There are harmalas in bobinsana, but they're very mild. And so if you really want to receive the information or experience the spirit of bobinsana, then you do need to eat a very simple diet leading up to it. So I'm not saying that there is no reason to monitor the dieta, but I am saying that combining these plants with ayahuasca is much more effective in a lot of cases than doing a dieta alone or drinking them separately. And the reason I think that is that we have a reducing valve in our consciousness, and the more subtle influence of these plants is easier to detect when your consciousness is open. And ayahuasca builds a bridge of dialogue between our biological system and our consciousness and that of these plants. Even if you don't think about the plants in terms of a spirit or even an essence, and you want to think about it in terms of enzymes and alkaloids, one way to understand that is that, you know, with the dieta and a very clean system, especially, you should be avoiding this anyways, but processed foods are enemy number one when it comes to plant medicine. I don't know if they interfere with things like LSD and DMT. I kind of doubt it. But maybe DMT, processed foods will actually, if you've been eating them for a long time and you come here and drink ayahuasca, oftentimes it takes weeks and even up to a full month before you can have visions. Because I think it's because there's aluminum in your receptors because you've been eating, Lay's potato chips and McDonald's and whatever else. And so, you have all these neurotoxins lodged in your transmitters, and you have to take some time to get them out in order to have receptivity to these plants. But anyways, on the level of the biological and chemical, when you eat something, you have all sorts of enzymatic reactions, and there are chemical reactions, and all sorts of different things happen depending on what constituents the food is made out of, right? So when you add a very complex chemical entourage of alkaloids into your system, the constitution of the enzymes in your stomach and the acids and the ratios of neurochemicals and all of these things are going to come into play. And so the purpose of the dieta, if you want to think about it in purely Western terms, is to consciously regulate and prepare your chemical constitution and enzymatic state for the introduction of these compounds. So no matter how you look at it, it all makes sense, if properly understood. And that's why, I've always gone through the trouble to learn both angles of all of this stuff, to make sure that I understand, what's happening in Western terms and what's happening in more traditional terms. They're both valid, they're both important, and they actually make more sense when they're understood together. Let me check the chat. Does that mean that the notifications are working? It's funny. As far as eating meat goes, pork is the only thing that I actually just kind of intuitively feel you actually should observe. I don't know what it is, but I eat bacon, but I don't normally eat pork anyways. There's just something wrong there. Maybe it's because the pig is too close to human, but it doesn't feel right in my body. It doesn't feel right in my mind. And that is the one thing that I have seen even, shamans that might eat a monkey the same day as ceremony will say don't eat pork before ayahuasca. That seems to be true. Somebody asked, it looks like Flezik, how the Warani have no concept of time and how that works. But their only temporal disposition is now. So we found this out actually, or no, we didn't find this out. We experienced it. And then I found out why I experienced it, I guess would be a better way to say it. We were trying to make an appointment with these Warani women to come to the village. Because it's the site of this murder that I read about when I was when I was a kid, when this village killed an entire plane full of missionaries because they were coming to steal their souls. And even though they didn't speak a word of Spanish or English, they were Americans actually. They still intuited that somehow, which I find to be absolutely remarkable. That did not escape them. That was the purpose of this journey into their territory. So they spirited them all the second time they landed when they came back. This actually happened again recently. A woman was told never to return, and she did it anyways, and no one's seen her since. So, don't do that. If the Warani tell you to go home, go home. Don't come back. But I kept asking, when should we come? Thursday? Like 2:00 or something, and I just got blank stares, and they're like, just come to the village. And we went through this like 3 or 4 times because I thought maybe something was getting lost in translation. Happens a lot with indigenous folks. Their minds work a lot differently than ours, and you're filtering through 2 languages basically. Part of it is just the structure, I think, of Quechua, Warani, any of these languages is very different. The way that the syntax is, engineered is totally different. But at any rate, yeah. So later I found out that they don't have any temporal designation, and then I understood why it was that we couldn't get a clear picture of when we should come to the village. Yeah. So another one that's actually really interesting. It's almost fun to try to read it in English the way that it's actually written. Is Nahuatl, which is the language that my son's name is taken from, Nagual. It is a spirit that transforms into either a wolf or a jaguar, which is interesting because when I met this Warani group, one of the women said you should name him Camperi, which it turns out is Warani for jaguar. So we had already named him Jaguar, and that was their suggestion that we rename him Jaguar, but he's already named Jaguar in Nahuatl. Interestingly, one of these offshoots of the Aztec have a bunch of weird similarities with Egypt. When they buried their chieftains, they created a little moat of mercury around I don't want to call it a sarcophagus, but their burial chamber. And of course, Mercury shares the name of the Mercury, the psychopomp that is supposed to ferry people away to the dead, but that's from a completely different culture. So we have this incredibly weird coincidence that I would call a synchronicity of the Nahuatl and the Egyptians of surrounding their, burial chambers with a mercury moat. And then we have this, Greek thing of this psychopomp ferrying the souls of the dead named Mercury. These things, of course, are not really a coincidence at the end of the day, I don't think. Just in the same way that, Mercury, we have discovered, with modern science that it's one proton away from being gold. You knock a proton off and it's gold. So, growing up, they told us that you cannot transform lead into gold, but then now they're doing it in laboratories. It's just too expensive to be profitable, but it is possible. And in the ancient alchemy, people think it's lead into gold, but it's actually not. There are stages in the process, and what it actually is a little bit of gold, mercury, which actually transforms the lead. It builds the bridge. The psychopomp is mercury in the chemical process of alchemy. I mean, how insane is this? And Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. So there's no way that this was consciously known, and I see that kind of stuff as evidence of the universal mind. To take that back to shamanism, we see that in the jungle as well, in a number of cases. When we make decisions about which part of the plant to use, it's often based on their physical characteristics, not anything else. There's a plant that's used to treat the bite of the Dos Equis, which is the most, it's responsible for 90% of all South American snake bite deaths. We have found 2 in our living area. By the way, this is not actually where the retreats are. At the retreat center, the jungle is peeled back. And it's not as attractive to do that, but it's much more safe. The people that own this property where we're staying while the retreat center was renovated, they are mestizo, which means they're, mixed, Spaniard and indigenous descent. And they don't do that. They don't peel the jungle back. So there are Brazilian wandering spiders, which are super deadly almost every day. I've seen 2 in a single day before. I mean, it's crazy. If you don't peel the jungle back away from the living areas, you end up with vipers and Brazilian wandering spiders and all sorts of menaces all up in your area. And the thing is, if you do peel the jungle back by knocking all the plants down, a good distance around, not only can you see everything, but the animals and snakes and stuff don't tend to, they don't want to pass through without the cover. So you almost never get, snakes or Brazilian wandering spiders or any of that stuff in our retreat center. But here there are plenty around. But what I was saying is that there's a plant that the skin of it, you can actually find this in my YouTube shorts. The skin of it looks like the skin of a Dos Equis. And it's actually used to treat the Dos Equis snake bite. Also, when you use Jurema preta, which is the Brazilian DMT containing plant, you guys would probably know it as Mimosa hostilis. It's the plant that almost everyone extracts their DMT from, their NN-DMT. They say that the experience is more grounded than that of ayahuasca. Well, in ayahuasca, the DMT comes from vines or from a plant. It's a coffee family plant, the Psychotria, and it flops all around. It's very springy. So, that's how you understand this, that if you use the springy part of the plant, it's going to be a very cerebral, spiritual, an experience that is, if you're going to use an elemental reference, of the air as opposed to of the earth. And so Jurema preta tends to be much more grounded because you're using the roots of the plant. And so things express their essential nature. This is one of the reasons that I've never really been able to accept the morphological explanation that DNA and chemical processes somehow blindly influence the shape of our eyeballs and, and even just the way that a tiger looks, or, you know what I mean? Things express their nature in a way that I don't think can be really explained, in absolute deterministic terms. And interestingly, if you haven't been following Michael Levin and his work on his mind everywhere theory, and the proof really that there is a morphogenetic field that is electromagnetic that has more to do with morphology than DNA does. They actually used electromagnetic pulses to influence this worm. I think it's called a filarium. It never dies. I think they might be single-celled too, but they live infinitely. They don't age. Which is scary because we already have started to stumble upon life extension technology. And now that we have this worm, probably won't be long before they figure out why it never ages, and they're able to apply that to humans. So if you were already concerned about life or depopulation, you probably should be even more concerned about it because there's another layer. But the point of it is that they gave these worms a shock, and they grew two heads, and their descendants also had two heads without changing the genome. So just kind of an interesting side note there. But yeah, there's a number of different plants that have that visual cue that lets you know what they do, and there are other signs as well. Everyone knows that yellow tends to be poisonous, and that the smell of garlic kills parasites, right? Because ajo de monte here in South America is used for a lot of the same things that bulb garlic is used for in European traditional medicine, including driving away evil spirits, which I think is really the most interesting part of that. And then cat's claw is a pretty interesting one because I don't know what they're called, but the little climbing appendages on the vine that hook into trees so that it can go to the canopy, they look exactly like jaguar claws. And the shaman says that drinking uña de gato lets a jaguar loose in your bloodstream, and it hooks its claws into things that shouldn't be there and drags them out. And so it turns out that clinical studies have shown us that it actually does that. Basically, it drags tumors out. It cleans the blood. What is it? There's some sort of toxic cell that's left over, leukemia. And then also after treatment for cancer, the chemotherapy, a lot of the residual evils that are left over from that are removed by this jaguar in your blood. And also arthritis and other types of inflammation, Alzheimer's, is really quite remarkable. I mean, when you look at the list of clinically verified applications for uña de gato, it really does seem like, when these shamans said it just drags everything out of your system that isn't supposed to be there, it seems like that's pretty much the case. So yeah, you guys, right on. I think that's going to just about do it because I need to play some music. We're getting ready for the retreats to start in about 2 weeks. The first guest arrives. So I have to make sure that all my songs are sharp. And also I'm going to do another high dose mushroom jam, either tomorrow or Sunday. And it requires me to know the songs pretty well so they don't come unglued on the internet. But those have been getting better and better. Last one went for 3.5 hours, quite a lot of people. So do join us for that. It's a lot of fun. I also, will go on mushroom fueled rants between songs. And I've been adding a lot of new material to those. So I need to play guitar to get ready for that. And so just one last word about the retreats. You can come for 1 day. You can come for 30 days. Since we're doing them 3 in a row, you could even come for 90 days. That would be the apprenticeship program. We would have to talk quite extensively before there's, one person is viable for that. And we would have to talk quite a bit, lengthy interview process before I would accept anyone for that. So September, November, December, psilocybin, changa, ayahuasca, San Pedro, rape, assuming availability, combo probably only in November and December, bobinsana, ajo sacha, all of the plants from the video today will be available in teas every day. We go on several voyages into the jungle a week. So, and then also on our downtime, because usually we'll have like 5 days of activities per week and then 2 days off. Not usually together, but 2 days for you to rest and integrate. And then we have lagoons down the street that are within walking distance. There's a smaller one. There's almost never anyone there, and it's absolute paradise. Waterfalls, crystal clear water, and you usually have the pools entirely yourself. So it's a great way to go and integrate and relax. You can even have a little bit of, whatever type of medicine on your day off. Generally, psilocybin is something that people can have on their own, and I don't need to worry about it. So that's a good choice for that. And then we have every day in the teas a little bit of psilocybin to maintain neuroplasticity and enhance neurogenesis throughout the course of the retreat. And then there are optional instructional sessions if you want to know about Hermetic philosophy or the Western mystery tradition. And anything else that you want to pick my brain about while you're down here. It can even be guitar instruction, anything that I can help you with that you want to learn. I'm there for that. And then we have 3 different Quechua shaman and shamana that we visit from time to time, or they may come to the property from time to time. I lead most of the ceremonies in the Shuar way, but we do have guests that are traditional Quechua yachak, they're called. Which is a word that almost no one hears. You hear Taita and you hear shaman and shamana, but the Quechua word is actually yachak. So I look forward to meeting quite a few of you over the next couple of months, and I will see you guys again very soon, probably next up a music stream. So hit the like button, share, subscribe, join us on Patreon. We're demonetized, so if you don't support me, I get no compensation. That's why I always mention it when I do these streams, and sometimes a couple of times, because I really do put a tremendous number of hours into this. And so in order to make that sustainable for me, I really need support from the community. And if you join the Patreon, I would say you are more than adequately compensated for your support. So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you again very soon.